Hey everyone, my name is Wedge and welcome to the Manasaurus Tournament Report. This weekend we only had one big standard event and it was in Austria. That's right, over the weekend the Grand Prix went to Vienna and we're here with the top 16 decks. 7 of which were Blue Devotion. Again. Hey, at least it's not a total repeat of the weekend before. We didn't see any Black Devotion this time. Once again, Blue Devotion dominated in numbers, with 7 of the top 16 decks running their Master of Waves playsets. This time though, one of those 7 decks claimed the #1 spot. We also saw Blue Devotion decks in 4th, 8th, 9th, 11th, 13th, and 14th places. Here's the thing. As you might expect by this point, the decks were nearly identical. In fact, 2 of the main decks were identical, card for card, and the sideboards weren't far off. The rest only had minor variations among them, playing around with numbers of Jaces and Cyclonic Rifts, or adding Domestication or Dissolve. Even the sideboards were similar across the deck. Notably, they were all packing playsets of Gainsay. Understandable considering how the field turned out. Moving down the list, we had Esper Control take 2nd place. Other Esper decks showed up in 15th and 16th. That 2nd place deck was unique among the decks in the top 16 and among Esper decks we've seen in general, in running Aetherling as its only win con. The other 2 decks were somewhat more traditional in that respect, running Elspeth and in one case even Blood Baron and Viscopa in the main deck. As for the rest, it was business as usual. Light on counters, heavy on spot removal, and the obligatory playsets of Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Revelation. We also had a couple other control decks in the top 16. Blue-White Control took 5th. Unlike its Esper cousin, this deck was quite heavy on counters, running a full set of Dissolve along with some Essence Scatters. The deck also ran a full playset of Last Breath, which makes a lot of sense with the number of small creatures in the field. There was also only one win condition in the deck, Elspeth Sun's Champion as a 3-of. Naturally, playsets of Sphinx's Revelation and Supreme Verdict also put in their appearance here. We had a Black-White control deck in 12th looking very much like a creature-light take on a Black-White midrange deck. Creatures were cut down to just Blood Baron, Desecration Demon, and Pack Rat with a single Sin Collector. The spell base is all about precise discard effects, with a set of Thoughtseize and some Duress to supplement the Sin Collector. Beyond that, it's exactly what you'd expect. Lots of spot removal in Devour Flesh, Duress, Hero's Downfall, Ultimate Price, Last Breath, and Underworld connections to keep the card advantage going. White-Red Aggro took 3rd, maintaining its position as the one deck that's never truly dominant but always makes a strong showing in small numbers. This time the deck dropped the Azorius Arresters and a couple Boros Charms, picking up Imposing Sovereign and a pair of Spear of Heliod. Those were all cards that had appeared in older variations of the deck but had taken a backseat for a while. No doubt the lack of Black Devotion in the top 16 helped make the Sovereigns relevant. Grey Merchant doesn't particularly care how it enters the battlefield as long as it does so, but other decks would rely on blockers to stay alive and feel the pain from the Sovereign. Red Devotion made a solid showing after a brief absence, bringing along its White Splash for Chain to the Rocks and some sideboard tech, taking 6th and 7th places. The main difference between the two was in Perforos. The 6th place deck made some room for a pair of the Red God, which was absent in the other deck by dropping some spells and 1 Chandra. That deck also threw in a 4th Burning Tree Emissary, a sensible choice with Perforos in. Beyond that, Fanatic of Mogis is as strong as ever once you have a table full of cheap double and triple red creatures behind it. And of course, heavy hitters like Boros Reckoner and Stormbreath Dragon help seal the deal for both decks. Rounding out our top 16, we had Green Devotion in 10th. We haven't seen this deck in a while. Recall that, in spite of its name, it does run some red for Domri Raid, Xenaghost the Reveler, and Rurik Thar. The main focus, though, is on green, with mana-sinking beasts like Arbor Colossus, Pelucranos World Eater, and a single Nylea God of the Hunt. Nylea and the 3 Reverend Hunters take advantage of the large green permanent count. The deck doesn't run any instants or sorceries, just creatures and planeswalkers. With this kind of list, mana acceleration is a big concern. Playsets of Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid, and Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, along with a pair of Voyaging Satyr, are enough to meet the deck's requirements. And that finishes our look at the top 16 from Vienna. Blue Devotion is still a juggernaut with other Devotion decks making token appearances. Wait, But Blue Devotion is the only one that uses tokens. But surprisingly and somewhat refreshingly, we have at least dodged the Black Devotion bullet, for this week at least. We suspect we haven't seen the last of the Gray Merchant, especially with its strong showings in Albuquerque. And Control is back, for better or for worse. While Esper and its ilk are hardly universally admired, it is nice to have the variety that Control brings back to the metagame. Next weekend, we have a Grand Prix in Dallas, Texas, and a Star City Open in Oakland, California. We'll be back this time next week with those top 8s. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.